Assalamu alaikum, Uncle Imran. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, I'm okay.
It's very nice to see you. I know you had a very hectic schedule, and you've just done the Dajjal seminar in Birmingham, which is the first of its kind, I think, after a long, long time. And this is the first one we had on Dajjal, I think, alongside.
I don't know of any other all-day seminar on Dajjal ever to have occurred. I don't know. So it appears to me that my seminar in Birmingham last Sunday may have been a unique event, the first time ever, an all-day seminar on Dajjal, and you could hear from my voice that I've not as yet recovered.
Alhamdulillah, at least there were so many people. I've heard like over 400 people.
More than 450 people attended. There was one who traveled from the United States, flew in for the seminar and flew back. There was one from Sweden, and several people from several different countries came. And we've been so pleased with this event in Birmingham that I can now let you know that the next time, if Allah allows me to return to Britain, I'm about to leave now in a few days' time. I just have one more lecture tomorrow night at Pearly Masjid on the Quran and money, and then I fly out 2 days later. But if Allah allows me to return, then we're going to plan seminars like we had in Birmingham to advertise long in advance so people can come from different parts of the world, and the different subjects. One will be in London, one will be in Birmingham, one will be in Manchester, and one will be in Glasgow, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. That's good. Let me get down to the questions. My first question is about Khidr al-Islam. But before I ask you about Khidr, I wanted to tell you about something that I've experienced. When I was young, I used to buy lots of books on Akhir Zaman, and one of the books was dedicated to Khidr al-Islam. On that book, I remember I read that the author wrote that Khidr al-Islam was either the friend or companion or the younger brother of Dhul-Qarnayn, and they were on a quest to find a well called Abi Hayat, or the Fountain of Youth, or something like that. And Khidr got lost, and Khidr found the well, and he drank from it, and then he disappeared. And Khidr and the well were not to be found, and Dhul-Qarnayn couldn't find them anywhere. And after that, the author explains the events of Musa alayhi salam and other events. So my question is, I'm not sure about the authenticity of this story, but my question is, what is the origin of Khidr? Is he a jinn, angel, a prophet, or human?
Thank you, Deen, for this question, but I want to teach you a lesson, and having taught you the lesson, taught all the others who will listen to this video. I want you to learn what is knowledge. For a Muslim, what is knowledge? And how do you distinguish what is knowledge from what does not qualify as knowledge? And therefore that you will not ever use your tongue to transmit to others what belongs to Disneyland. It's not only unbecoming of a Muslim to engage in Disneyland stuff, but also dangerous to transmit Disneyland stuff to others. The proper methodology of pursuing knowledge for a Muslim who says he is a follower of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and therefore that he accepts the Quran as the word of the one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to always turn first of all to the Quran. If you turn first of all to the Hadith, you're not following proper methodology. You're wasting your own time, and you're wasting my time as well. If you don't turn to the Hadith, you turn to some Tom, Dick or Harry who gets information from I don't know where. Without having turned to the Quran first of all, then you are less than even a student. So my advice is to always turn to the Quran first of all to acquire knowledge. And if our subject is Khidr alayhi salam, go first to the Quran. Does the Quran tell us any information about him? And then having gone to the Quran and located from the Quran what is there in the Quran on the subject, only then do you go to the Hadith. And that's your second source of knowledge, the Hadith. But when you go to the Hadith, you look for those ahadith which are in harmony with the Quran. That's your first duty. And when you find ahadith which are in harmony with the Quran, then in accordance with the procedure of recognizing the Quran is absolute truth. Supreme knowledge is in the Quran. You now accept the ahadith which are in harmony with the Quran. I've been teaching this for so long. When you accept these ahadith which are in harmony with the Quran, your database will expand. Your capacity to understand the subject will expand. Only then after that do you go to knowledge which is located outside of the Quran and Hadith. And from the time you find the knowledge that you get outside of the Quran and the Hadith, if it is in conflict with the Quran, you reject it. If a Hadith is in conflict with the Quran, you reject it. And if that knowledge outside of the Quran and Hadith is not in harmony with the Quran or not in conflict with the Quran, it has a lower status, not worthy of being used for building the edifice of knowledge. So I don't know where this author got his information from, but it most certainly, he didn't get all of this knowledge from the Quran. Where he got it from, I don't know, and believe you me, I don't care. When you go to the Quran, you find that Khidr alayhi salam is not mentioned by name. But from the Hadith we're able to identify that this is Khidr alayhi salam. The Hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. And the Khidr that we find in the Quran, in Surah Al-Kahf, this is the only place in the Quran in which we locate that which can be identified as Khidr alayhi salam. The Khidr alayhi salam that we identify in the Quran is a human being. Yes, he's not an angel, he's not a jinn, he's a human being. Whether he is a prophet or not, I ask you, I invite you, go look at the Quran. Does the Quran say he's a prophet? Is it the function of Tom, Dick and Harry to appoint prophets? No, only Allah appoints a prophet. And if Allah has not confirmed that someone is a prophet, then the proper response from us should be to keep quiet. We don't know whether he's a prophet or not. We do not want to know. If Allah says he's a prophet, fine. If Allah does not, this is not knowledge for us. Yes, this is Khidr alayhi salam. If he is not a jinn, he's not an angel, he's a human being. We do not know whether or not he's a prophet, and we don't care for that. No. Then what is his function? Allah has sent the Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran as a surah par excellence of Akhir Zaman. And in Akhir Zaman we are being subjected to the greatest tests and trials that mankind will experience from the time of Adam alayhi salam to the last day. And those tests and trials come most of all from Dajjal. If you want to understand Dajjal, if you want to respond to Dajjal, follow Khidr. That is why Allah sent him. Allah sent Khidr alayhi salam in the Quran to be the model of Islamic scholarship in Akhir Zaman. This is why the Darul Ulum is a total, complete failure, including Al-Azhar University and all the so-called Islamic universities. They are a total failure in respect of recognizing the reality of the world today and responding to it appropriately. They're closing the doors of the masjid on me. Shame on them. Your Darul Uloom is a total failure. It is producing graduates who are incapable of recognizing the reality of the world today and in responding to it appropriately, because they're not following the model of scholarship which has come from Khidr alayhi salam. What is that model of scholarship which has come from Khidr alayhi salam? Number one, that Allah says of him, وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّ عِلْمًا. He is a man who is personified by knowledge which has come directly from Allah. There are two sources of knowledge. There is knowledge which is externally acquired and knowledge which is internally received. And Khidr alayhi salam receives knowledge internally. Only those who receive knowledge internally can interpret the ayat mutashabihat of the Quran. And even when they interpret it, only Allah can confirm that their interpretation is correct. Khidr alayhi salam is to be found at a place where the two oceans meet. And these are the ocean of knowledge that is externally acquired and the ocean of knowledge which is internally received. When these two oceans of knowledge are harmoniously integrated with each other, only then will you produce the scholar who can recognize the reality of the world today and respond to it appropriately. And the Darul Uloom is not doing that. They can shut the doors of the masjid to me, but history will leave them behind. And those who follow the methodology and the path of Khidr alayhi salam, they are the ones who will succeed in recognizing the reality of the world today and responding to it appropriately.
One of the major signs of the last day is dukhan, smoke. And in one of your lectures you mentioned that it could be the mushroom clouds from the big war, Malhama. Could this smoke also be the harp that we're seeing, the chemtrail in the sky? A couple of months ago I saw this strange chemtrail which looked like at first I thought it was Star of David, it looked like a star. And then I saw there was a circle around it, and it actually symbolizes, this kind of symbol symbolizes Satan worshippers use this symbol. And I was shocked to see that this was on the sky. So I'm just wondering.
Okay, my Islamic eschatology comes from the Quran first of all. And then it comes from the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, which are in harmony with the Quran. When from these two sources we get the information that one of the major signs of the last day is dukhan, and Allah confirms in the Quran that the dukhan or the smoke will come after a flash of fire. Yursalu alaykuma shuwazun min nar wa nuhasun fala tantasiran. Surah Ar-Rahman. So the smoke comes after a flash of fire. It appears to me, Deen, that this points very clearly in the direction of the mushroom clouds that come from nuclear explosion. And so I don't know what is HARP. I have not had the time to devote attention to HARP. Those who have their time to do it should do it, and let them speak about it, and allow me to restrict myself to eschatology which comes out of the Quran and Hadith. Chemtrails, I don't know about the chemtrails. I see in the sky, and people write to me about the chemtrails. Yes, I can see it in the sky. But those who have the scientific knowledge, the expertise, they have the technical knowledge with which to be able to comment in a in a serious way about HARP and about chemtrails, they should do that rather than I speak on a knowledge on a subject that I don't have the competence on which to speak. So very clearly, my view is that the smoke is attached to the flash of fire and therefore to the Great War.
In the hadith mentions that Dabba appears holding the seal of Solomon and the staff of Moses. It will illuminate the face of the believer and seal the nose of the unbeliever. When people living at the time come together, believers and unbelievers will be distinguished. It's in Ahmad Hanbal. What is your opinion?
Your hadith tells you that Dabbatul Ard will be holding the staff of Moses. That's what your hadith tells you. What does your Quran tell you? If you use proper methodology, you will always first go to the Quran for knowledge. And when you get knowledge from the Quran on the Batul Ard, only then will you go to the hadith and see whether the hadith is in harmony with the Quran. When will my students use proper methodology for the pursuit of knowledge? I am 76 years of age. I may not have much time left before Allah calls me away. Let me say it one more time. Proper methodology is to go first to the Quran. If you go first to the Quran and you'll search for Dabbatul Ard, you find only two references in the Quran. One is Dabbatul Ard, who will come to consume, not to hold, to consume, ta'akul, akala, to consume the stuff, not the staff of Moses. Hadith says staff of Moses, but the Quran says staff of Sulaiman. So who are you going to follow, the Hadith or the Quran? Huh? The Quran speaks of the staff of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Hadith speaks about the staff of Moses. Which one shall we follow? Which one should we accept? Which one qualifies as knowledge? Obviously it's the Quran. And there are jinn who are working for Sulaiman alayhi salam. Even after he has died, they cannot disobey, because if they disobey, Allah will punish them severely. And they don't know that he is dead, but they're still working. Why? Because they're seeing someone sitting on his throne, holding on to his stuff. And so long as he's holding on to that stuff, they cannot recognize that this is the Jasad, this is Dajjal, in my opinion. They believe that it is Sulaiman, and so they continue working for him, and he gives them all kind of dirty things to do, and they're still doing it for him. This is going on up to this moment that I'm speaking to you, Deen. Yes? But the world of Islamic scholarship chooses to say, no, Imran Hosein is wrong. Yes. And they close the doors of the masjid to me. Nobody is saying this. Nobody. Well, wait. History will leave you behind and move on. When Dabbatul Ard comes, and Allah sends Dabbatul Ard, and Dabbatul Ard consumes the stuff, then the stuff will lose its miraculous quality, in consequence of which whoever is holding the stuff can get the jinn to believe that this is still Sulaiman, when in fact it's not Sulaiman. And that time when the Dabbatul Ard consume the stuff, the jinn will recognize this is not Sulaiman. This is someone else, this is the Jasad. And they stop working, and that's goodbye to Israel at that time. If you're Maulana, if you're Sheikh, if you're Mufti, If your illustrious scholars are teaching this, fine. But if they are not, it's time to wake up and go back to the Quran. Yes. What could Dabbatul Ard be that consumes the miraculous spiritual heart of the stuff? What can it be? And my warning is that if Dabbatul Ard could do that to this stuff, he can do that to you as well and to your children. So there is something released into the world which is very dangerous for the spiritual life, destroying the spiritual life. And when the spiritual life is destroyed and we all become jasads like Dajjal, then we have a status equal to cattle. And Dajjal can easily just the Pied Piper of Hamlet, and all the jasads will follow him into Jahannam. What could that Dabbatul Ard be? The second reference in the Quran to Dabbatul Ard says it is, the Quran has a word which can be read as either taklimuhum or tukallimuhum. Either of the two. The Arab, the punctuation did not come from Allah. It did not come from Jibreel alayhi salam. It is human beings who put in that punctuation. So we are not obliged to accept that punctuation. Human beings can make mistakes. And so this is either the Dabbatul Ard which speak to mankind or would wound mankind. Which one? The overwhelming majority out there have been caught hook, line and sinker which speak to mankind. Speak to mankind. No, I say no. The one that is more likely to be the correct rendering is taklimuhum, wound mankind. It is something that will cause damage to you. What is it that will cause damage not only to the staff of Sulaiman alayhi salam, and also cause damage to mankind? Taklimuhum. And my answer, and I can be wrong. Yes, I can be wrong. And so I always invite my students and those who listen to me to do not accept my opinion until you are convinced that it is correct. Because I make mistakes. Yes, I'm happy that I make mistakes. The Quran keeps on correcting me. Yes. And I'm happy when the Quran corrects me. My style is once I know I've made a mistake, immediately I correct myself. I don't care two peanuts about those who criticize me. This man making mistake. I don't care two peanuts for you. If I have made a mistake and the Quran has corrected me, I must have the integrity to immediately correct myself, regard for consequences. And so I have said, I may be wrong, I believe that Dabbatul Ard, which is attacking the spiritual heart of the staff, and also attacking mankind, in particular our children, I believe it is the electromagnetic waves with which we are being inundated now, particularly in the cities of the modern world. And in the process of being damaged, the memory is being damaged. The memory. A child at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 has the most powerful memory and is able to memorize the whole Quran. If I am correct, then I am saying to you here from London today that tomorrow you will not be able to have any Hafiz of the Quran, none, from children who live in the cities, because their memory will be destroyed. And the only Hafiz of the Quran, the only child who can memorize the whole Quran, is the one who is away from Dabbatul Ard. Meaning a child who grew up in the remote countryside and is not damaged by the electromagnetic waves with which we are inundated. Now, Deen, this is my answer to your question.
Well, one of the major signs of the last day is fire coming out of Yemen. Is this, in your opinion, is this something that will trigger the Malhama? Because Yemen is being bombed by Saudi Arabia recently.
Yeah, this is This is a good question. It's also a difficult question. The Prophet ﷺ was passing by some of his companions who were talking amongst themselves. And he asked, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "We are talking about the signs of the last day." And he said that the last day would not come until, and then he mentioned 10 signs. And one of the 10 is a fire which will come out of Yemen and which will drive people to their place of assembly, hashar. When will this fire come out of Yemen? We have not been given the signs, these 10 major signs, Dajjal, Gog and Magog, the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, smoke, Dabbatul Ard, the sun rising from the west, the 3 khusuf or earthquakes, with the earth sinking and swallowing what it swallows, one in the east, one in the west, and one in Arabia, and the fire which comes out of Yemen. We have not been given these 10 signs in the chronological sequence in which they occur. And so when we offer an opinion, it is just our opinion. We can be right, we can be wrong. And I still have difficulties. Yes, Deen, I still have difficulties in trying to locate when will this fire of Yemen come out in the chronological sequence. I know, for example, that we are now located at that moment in time when the next major event to occur would be the Great War. They are lusting for war with Russia, NATO, and when the war does take place, they're going to get a bitter surprise, because we have information from Surah Al-Rahman, for example. We have information from Surah Al-Rum, for example, of what is going to happen in that great war. The next event after the Great War is the conquest of Constantinople. And the next event after that will be the Khuruj of Dajjal. And we know that only after Dajjal has emerged and declared himself to be the Messiah, only then, I believe, I can be wrong, that Imam al-Mahdi would be, the advent of Imam al-Mahdi will occur. And after Imam al-Mahdi appears, alayhi salam, only then would Nabi Isa alayhi salam return. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam will then kill Dajjal. And Allah will then destroy, not release, destroy Gog and Magog. And then after that would come the end of history, where you will have Imam al-Mahdi ruling from a Khilafah state in Mecca, and that means that the kingdom, the American kingdom of Saudi Arabia would return to the garbage bin from which it emerged in the first place. And when the when the Khilafah state is restored, then all those who follow Nabi Muhammad ﷺ will pledge their allegiance to that state rather than to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Republic of Turkey and the Republic of Egypt and all the rest of that paraphernalia. That's gone, finished. What now remains is this Khilafah state. But our excellencies and prime ministers and presidents, they have less than a passing acquaintance with Islam, the knowledge of Islam. Yes, these are people ruling over us. The Khilafah state will be restored in Mecca, and Imam al-Mahdi will be ruling over the Ummah of Muhammad al-Islam. But he would not be ruling the world, because our Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that when Jesus returned, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, he will rule the world. He will rule the world, and he will rule the world from Jerusalem. So Imam al-Mahdi will rule over this ummah from Mecca. But Nabi Isa alayhi salam will rule over the world from Jerusalem. When will the fire come out of Yemen? I have to say to you, as Deen, I don't know. I still don't know. But what I can say clearly is that the Saudis are now building the fire. Foolishly so, which will consume them. That's right. Thank you.
In a hadith in Sahih Muslim, regarding the conquest of Constantinople, towards the end of that hadith, it says, after the Muslims win the war, Satan will shout among them, the Messiah Dajjal has taken your place among your families, so they will march towards Dajjal, but these words of the Satan will be false. When they reach Syria, Dajjal will emerge. So it seems like Satan is helping Dajjal in some way. What is the relationship between Iblis or Satan and Dajjal?
Iblis is a jinn. Those jinn who follow Iblis are called the shayateen. Dajjal is not a jinn, but Dajjal will have control over the jinn who are shayateen. Okay? Because Allah has placed the jinn under the control of Sulaiman. وَآخَرِينَ مُقَرَّنِينَ فِي الْأَصْفَادِ, says the Quran. These jinn are obliged, they are commanded by Allah to work for Sulaiman. And when the Jasad sits on the throne instead of Sulaiman, holding on to the staff of Sulaiman, and the jinn do not know that this is not Sulaiman, this is Iblis, this is Dajjal. They don't know that. So they continue working for Dajjal. So there's a direct link between Dajjal and the Shayateen, that they all work for him and will continue working for him, despite the fact that he is an evil being and he's asking them to do evil things. They have this incapacity to recognize that this is not Sulaiman. Incapacity. So the answer to your question is perfectly clear. That Dajjal has the shayateen working for him, and they are bound to work for him. If they stop working, Allah will punish them. They're working for him because they believe he is Sulaiman. From the time they know that he is not Sulaiman alayhi salam, he's someone else, they don't have to work for him anymore. That event is still to come.
If US is the ruling state of the world and Israel controls the Congress, could it be that we're already in a day like a week?
Yes, I concede that this is indeed a possibility. Many of my students have been arguing this case, yes, and I'm now prepared to say yes. This is indeed a possibility, that we are already in a day like a week. Excuse me. But I would like to qualify my statement. I believe that we are in the process and transition from a day like a month to a day like a week. Because I noticed that the process of transition from a day like a year to a day like a month was not accomplished unless and until there were great wars. And the process of transition, therefore, from a day like a month to a day like a week, in my opinion, requires great wars. And we are now on the verge of a great war, the greatest war of all. And so I think I would qualify that statement, and I would say that we are now in the stage of transition from a day like a month to a day like a week.
Why do you say Tamir al-Dari meeting Dajjal in an island was actually a vision, not an actual event?
The hadith says that when Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. One day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week. وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ, and all his days, meaning all the rest of his days, like our days. Now then, is it so difficult to understand that when his day is like our day, he would be in our world of space and time? Is that so difficult to understand? When he is in our world of space and time, we would see him as a human being. And our Prophet said that he would be a Jew. He would be a young man. He would be powerfully built. He'll have the curls at the side of his head. But before his day is like our day, when he is in a day which is like a year, a day which is like a month, a day which is like a week, and the Quran refers to this as intaliku ila zillin zi salasi shu'ab, proceed to a shadow which will have 3 stages. We say these are the 3 stages. It is only when these 3 stages have passed that the shadow will go and the reality will appear. The reality will be a man who will appear before you as a human being. That's the reality. But prior to that, it's a shadow. So he's not in our world of space and time. So we cannot see him. No. Let me repeat that one more time. When the Dajjal is released, and he is in a day like a year, and a day like a month, and a day like a week, he is not in our world of space and time. He is in another dimension of space and time. We can't see him. I hope I don't have to repeat this 100,000 times. But what can I do if there are people who have only peanuts in their heads? And they have lost the capacity to think. Tamim al-Dari saw Dajjal. And when he saw him, he saw a human being. And when he saw the human being, he saw the human being with chains. Shall I repeat that? Tamim al-Dari saw Dajjal. And when he saw him as a human being. And he saw him as a human being with chains on his neck, chaining his hands, and his chains on his feet. I ask of you, how is it possible in the real world, if this is a real event, how is it possible to see Dajjal as a human being in our world of space and time, with chains on his neck and chains on his feet? He's not as yet released. That's not possible. The only time you can see Dajjal as a human being is after he has been released. The chains have been removed. And he has completed a day like a year, and a day like a month, and a day like a week. Only now can you see Dajjal as a human being. How can you see him with chains on his neck and chains on his feet? Not possible. So I conclude that this is a vision. But if you choose to choose something else, that's your choice. Next question, please.
In Hadith, it is mentioned that the Dajjal will not appear until the people become negligent in talking about him, and until the Imams abandoned talking about him on the mimbars in their khutbah. I did a test many years ago. I did a test on two Imams. I asked them if you could mention Dajjal and warn the people about Dajjal in the khutbah, and they plainly refused. So what is your opinion? Why are Imams not mentioning Dajjal in their khutbah?
I'm afraid I don't want to comment on the illustrious scholars of Islam who are shutting the doors of the masjid on me, who do not teach the subject of Dajjal. They know nothing about money, and they're giving bogus fatwas on money. And I am able to teach the subject, and they close the doors of the masjid on me. Shame on them, shame on them, shame on them. I don't know, you have to ask them, why are they doing that? Why do they not talk about Dajjal?
Post-nuclear world war, after the Malhama, when there's shortage of food, will Gog and Magog, or the godless society, become cannibals and start hunting people to eat them? Because I think one of the hadiths mentions this.
What we do have, no, we don't have any hadith about cannibalism. What we do have is that Dajjal will cause the rain to stop falling. And therefore, he has control over the climate. The first year, 1/3 of the rain will stop falling, and 1/3 of the crops will not grow. And then the second year, 2/3 rain would not fall. And then on the third year, no rain will fall. And every hoofed animal will die. And then the people ask, O Messenger of Allah, how will we eat when there is no food? And then he said that every Subhanallah will become food. Every Alhamdulillah will become food. Every Allahu Akbar will become food. My understanding, and I can be wrong, and I have made mistakes in the past, and so I plead with you, do not accept my viewpoint unless you are convinced it is correct, and then you are responsible at that time. Don't blame me. That when Banu Israel were in Sinai and there was no food, Allah sent food for them. The birds would be flying, and very close you can catch them. And then in the early morning at dawn, there was the honey which came down, something like honey, sticky. And you have to gather it before the sun comes up, otherwise it will melt. So Allah can send food for people when there is no food. The second instance we have is Maryam, when she was in the mihrab. And when Zakaria alayhi salam would come and ask her, and he sees the food, Anna laki hadha, O Maryam, from where did you get this food? And she said, I asked and Allah sent me the food. So therefore, the likely explanation is that the believers of Allah who have sincerity in their hearts can turn to Allah and ask for food, and Allah can send it to them. The last example we have is the one where there is a demand from the disciples of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. We are asking you, ask Allah to send us a table full of cooked food. Cooked food. Huh? And Nabi Isa alayhi salam asked, and Allah sent a table with cooked food. So therefore this is a possibility that at that time when there is famine, that Allah can provide food for His servants. Yeah.
And in time hadith, in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, it is mentioned that the Muslim will kill the Jews, and the stones will speak, and they say there's a Yahudi hiding behind me, come and kill him. And it also mentions that the stones will speak except the Garkat tree because it belongs to the Jews. What is this?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I cannot comment on the Gulf country. All I know, this is what the Hadith says, yeah.
Where will Imam Mahdi be when Isa alayhi salam takes his people to Mount Tur? Because there's no mention of Imam
we
Mahdi.
don't know. The Quran and the Hadith do not tell us where he will be at that time. We know that both of them will be in the masjid, in Damascus, both of them. And then Nabi Isa alayhi salam will leave the masjid and pursue Dajjal until he overtakes him at Lud and kills him. But the Hadith does not tell us where Imam al-Mahdi will travel from there. We don't know.
Between the 50s and the 60s, a very well-known peacetime battle between America and Russia was the race to the moon. And there are conspiracy theorists or experts who say mankind have never ever left the Earth, low Earth orbit, let alone landing a man on the moon. Has Nazar been lying about?
I will have to travel to the moon one day, and I'll have to check it out, and then I'll let you know whether NASA was lying or not, yes.
Back in the 80s, US helped Afghanistan defeat the Soviets. Then they turned their back on Afghanistan and unleashed the so-called war on terror. Some say this may have been the fulfillment of the hadith of the betrayal of Rome. What is your opinion?
I don't know what is the betrayal of Rome. I know there's a hadith that some Rome will land in the north of Syria, and this is a Rome against whom we'll have to fight. But in the Quran, there is another Rome, and you have to be careful when you deal with the subject of Rome, because in the Quran there is a Rome who is blessed by Allah to defeat the Persians. And when that victory of Rome takes place, then we, the Muslims, will celebrate, says the Quran. وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. But then the Quran goes on to say that part of Rome abandoned the law. And when they abandoned the law, then Allah cursed them. And He said, كُونُوا كِرَدَةً خَاسِئِينَ. So there is one part of Rome which in the Quran is still a people blessed by Allah, and another part of Rome which in the Quran are a people cursed by Allah. Is that clear? Is that clear? They're not the same. A Rome which is blessed by Allah and a Rome which is cursed by Allah. Our primary source of knowledge is always the Quran. And this has come from the Quran. So those who come, when Rome lands in the north of Syria and we have to fight that Rome, can it be the Rome that is blessed by Allah? Or would it be the Rome which is cursed by Allah? I don't think that any people other than those who still have peanuts in their heads would ever recognize that the Rome which is blessed by Allah would be a Rome that we'll have to fight against. The ones who are cursed by Allah are the ones who will most likely betray us, yes.
As part of the sexual revolution, we are seeing men dressed as women and women dressed as men. But not only that, some go extreme, they have surgery to change their gender. Satan worshippers also portray Satan as a transgender type of figure. The bottom part is male, the upper part is female, one of the hands is male, the other hand is female. Is this to mock Allah's creation?
Iblis asked for Allah to grant him time until the day of judgment, the day of resurrection. And Allah gave him time. He then said, if now that you've given me the time, I'm going to lie in wait for them. mankind, these whom you have honored above me. I'm going to lie in wait for them. And I'm going to cause them, Iblis, I am going to cause them to change Allah's creation. This is his explicit warning in the Quran. And here we are. Obviously, this is an attempt to change Allah's creation, precisely what Iblis said that he would do. That's my answer to you.
Jack Parsons, who invented the first ever rocket engine to use company's rocket propellant and pioneered the advancement of both liquid fuel and solid fuel rockets, who then became a Satanist and joined Aleister Crowley's new religious movement. He developed a fuel that could enable us to penetrate the stratosphere. Satellite could not have come about without Jack Parsons. He developed a fuel that could enable... in his diary in 1948, he wrote that he had a dream, and he actually wrote this. He had a dream, and in his dream, he met someone, and he mentioned that someone as Belial Dajjal, and he tells that Dajjal tells him, "You are helping me." And another guy in the in a BBC interview, he's a science writer, in 1961, he predicted that the internet. He predicted the internet and the. He said by the year 2000 people will use handheld devices. He also said no technology reaches a level of complexity except it becomes indistinguishable from magic. Does this mean all or most technologies were developed by devil worshippers who are linked with other
Yes, there is a possibility that perhaps part of the new technology may have been based upon sincere and effort scientific research, but most certainly that part of the new technology certainly has come from other sources, from satanic sources, yes?
What is your opinion on Brexit? Would Brexit be the beginning of the collapse of the world economy and paper money?
I am of the opinion that what is happening in the world of money ever since, ever since gold and silver were prohibited as money in the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund, they prohibited gold and by implication silver, so that they could replace the gold and silver, which is real money, with a bogus monetary system. I have always said that this is Dajjal at work. He wants to take control of the world of money so that he can then rule the world by ruling the world of money. So that eventually he first used Britain, and then used the United States, and then finally he will use Israel, so that Israel will become a ruling state in the world. But for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, the changes taking place in the world of money have to conclude with one world currency for all of mankind. So goodbye to your Pakistani rupee. One world currency for all of mankind. Therefore, the US dollar has to be dismantled. I think they would much prefer a dismantling rather than a collapse, because a collapse is a messy affair. It causes riots, it causes anarchy and so on. So I think they would much prefer, the Zionist ruling clique, they would much prefer what I call a soft landing. So not only must the US dollar be dismantled, but the euro has also to be dismantled. And I therefore look at Brexit as part and parcel of the overall strategy of dismantling the monetary system operating in Europe in the form of the euro.
My last question. An education system is coming in 2020 in UK. It will become compulsory to teach children in schools about sex segregation related to homosexuality, and that they will be taught that it is acceptable for a man to love another man, this kind of thing. What is your opinion what is your advice to the people of Britain, the Muslims living in Britain and the West?
No, I don't have any advice for them. I only have knowledge to give to them. And this is absolutely certain knowledge. They better wake up. That if they allow their children to go to such schools, whether the law asks you to do it or does not ask you to do it is irrelevant to me. Irrelevant. If you allow your children to go to such schools, and your children are taught that a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate, that this is perfectly acceptable, Allah will send you into the hellfire, because He has commanded you in the Quran, protect yourself and protect your families from the fire. Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. And you choose to tell Allah, off with you, I don't care for you. I don't care for your commands in the Quran. And you send your children to this school, He'll throw you into the hellfire, and when you're in the hellfire, don't send me an email saying, Sheikh, what did I do? That's my answer to you. If you have children, and the law requires you to send your children to the school to be taught this rubbish, this dangerous rubbish, then your obligation is to make hijrah. And Allah's earth is wide. However, the warning now is that if you have not had sincerity in your heart, in your relationship with Allah, you can try as much as you want to make hijrah. You will never succeed. Allah will block every single door to you. Yes. You remain sitting and eating and living comfortably while the rest of the world is suffering and suffering and suffering. And now you want to jump out of the pot. And it's too late. Too late to jump out of the pot. Why? Because you have not been sincere in your heart, in your relationship with Allah. And it's now too late. I have found so many people who have tried to make hijrah, and all that they do is that they return back to Britain. They fail. Because you did not have sincerity in your heart in the first place. So Allah has blocked the door to hijrah for you. You will now remain in the boiling pot and boil with the rest of mankind.
Jazakumullah khairan, Uncle Imran, for this interview. We have a growing number of students in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, in the Arab world, and now a lot of students are growing in the West as well. Some of them sent their salams to you. I can't remember the names.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah. I visited Bangladesh twice, and I love the country. I don't like Dhaka, but I love the countryside. It's very beautiful. And the people of Bangladesh, they receive me with love and affection and with so much generosity, and shared their food with me, and it's delicious food. Thank you. Thank you, Deen.
May Allah give you good health and the strength to come back
Thank
to
you.
do more lectures.
Thank you. All right. So, wa alaikum salam.